Developing right now on Morning News Now, diplomacy and the art of the deal in Davos. New this morning, President Trump celebrating his newly formed Board of Peace, billed as an international body to resolve global conflicts with a $1 billion membership fee. This just hours after the president said he's canceling planned tariffs on European allies and announcing what he called the framework of a future deal on Greenland. We'll bring you the latest from overseas. Also this morning, not guilty. A former Uvalde school police officer acquitted of charges that he failed to act nearly 4 years after that mass shooting at Robb Elementary School that killed 19 students and 2 teachers. We will take you to Texas for more on the verdict and the reaction. Plus, bracing for impact, a massive winter storm set to sweep us from the south to the northeast with heavy snow and crippling cold, with tens of millions of people already under weather alerts this morning. We're tracking the system, the dangers, and what officials are doing to keep people safe. And he's sounding the alarm on outrageous ambulance bills after a 6-mile ride that ended up costing thousands of dollars. We will introduce you to one man who fought back against his insurance company and won. That's our Cost of Denial series. We love bringing you in. Look who's with us.
Good to see you guys. Good morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for starting your Thursday with us. We are going to begin our show in Switzerland, where President Trump is walking back his threat of additional tariffs on European allies if Greenland is not sold to the U.S. by February 1st. Well, the president backed down following a meeting with NATO's Secretary General yesterday on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos. He said they had formed the framework of a future deal.
The president sparked a diplomatic firestorm with European allies over his desire to acquire the Arctic island, which is a territory of Denmark. Both Greenland and Denmark have insisted it's not for sale, a position strongly backed by Europe. During his speech earlier in the day, the president doubled down on his wish to buy the territory, which he repeatedly confused with Iceland. He also described Greenland as a piece of ice and criticized longstanding allies for opposing him. Speaking to CNBC last night, the president gave few details about what this deal actually involved.
We have a concept of a deal. I think it's going to be a very good deal for the United States, also for them. And we're going to work together on something having to do with the Arctic as a whole, but also Greenland, and it has to do with the security. It's a little bit complex, but we'll explain it down the line. But the Secretary General of NATO and I and some other people were talking, and it's the kind of a deal that I wanted to be able to make.
In a few moments, we're going to hear from Robert English. He's the director of the USC School of International Relations. First, let's get to NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez and NBC's Ellison Barber, who joins us from Greenland. Gabe, let's start with you. What more can you tell us about this potential deal over Greenland? Do we know if it involves ceding any territory to the U.S.?
Well, Joe and Savannah, good morning. A lot of questions about this deal at this point. The president not providing any details when pressed on it yesterday, as you just heard. But he did say, he told reporters that this would be, quote, a long-term deal. Now, we are learning from our sources, 2 former U.S. officials as well as some congressional official, that the president walked into Davos wanting to negotiate here, despite his escalating rhetoric over the past several days about acquiring Greenland. Now, the New York Times is also reporting, citing 3 officials familiar with the talks, that in a separate meeting, NATO officials discussed a compromise in which Denmark would give the U.S. sovereignty over small pockets of Greenland where the U.S. could build military bases. Now, an existing agreement dating back decades already allows the U.S. to expand its military presence in Greenland. But at this point, Joe and Savannah, a lot of unanswered questions about the exact details of this framework.
Ellison, let's bring you in here again, joining us from Greenland. How are officials in Denmark and there in Greenland reacting to this potential deal, potential framework?
So we haven't heard from Greenland's prime minister just yet. We do expect to hear from him at some point later today, but we are getting a statement from the prime minister of Denmark saying this in part. I can read some of it to you here. So she says, in essence, that Security in the Arctic is and has been a matter for all of NATO. She says that the Kingdom of Denmark has long worked for NATO to increase engagement in the Arctic. And she went on to say this, quote, "We can negotiate on everything, political, security, investments, economy, but we cannot negotiate on our sovereignty." She said, "I have been informed that this has not been the case either." And she said, and of course, only Denmark and Greenland themselves can make decisions on issues concerning Denmark and Greenland. In terms of just the general sense here, which I know we can talk a little more about, a lot of people are saying we need to see more details of this, because this shift, this announcement from President Trump last night, it was quite a shock here in Greenland. Savannah, Joe?
We know that people in Greenland were also worried, Ellison, just about the president potentially using military force to take over the island. The president did seem to rule that out in his speech yesterday, but as we mentioned, he repeatedly described Greenland as a piece of ice. He confused it with Iceland. Just in general, how are folks there reacting to his speech?
I mean, people were flabbergasted. You mentioned that comment where he described it as a piece of ice, a block of ice. That did not go over well. One woman telling us, "We are not a block of ice. We are human beings." And at the time, she said, and this was before he made that announcement about this framework of a deal with NATO, she said, "We have a lot of people here, grandparents, children, who are afraid right now of what the U.S. might do." Let you listen to some of what we have heard in terms of what was said at Davos and also some of the initial reaction we got here in Greenland after President Trump announced this framework of a deal with NATO. Listen.
I think it's a little bit a loss of respect that he just called Greenland a piece of ice. It's more than a piece of ice.
I think it's madness. If they want to be Americans, it's not a decision for NATO to do, or for Denmark for that sake.
And in terms of that Davos speech, another thing that did not go over well here in Greenland was President Trump's suggestion, or claim rather, that after World War II, the United States gave Greenland back to Denmark. The United States never owned Greenland. There was a time during World War II where Nazi Germany had invaded Denmark, and there was an agreement between the United States and Denmark's then ambassador to the United States to militarily defend Greenland from Nazi Germany. But the U.S. never owned Greenland. In fact, they'd made an offer after the war to buy Greenland from Denmark. Denmark said no. Then there was a defense agreement related to Greenland in 1951, where in Article 2 of that agreement, the United States recognized Denmark's sovereignty here. Joe, Savannah?
Gabe, earlier this morning, we mentioned this a moment ago. Another thing we want to ask you about, the president participated in a signing ceremony. This is for his Board of Peace, so it's being billed as this international body that can resolve these global conflicts, but others are saying it could undermine the United Nations. Tell us about what this board is and what we heard from the president.
Yeah, that's right, Savannah. This has become pretty controversial. The Board of Peace, we first heard about it when President Trump was talking about it in the context of the reconstruction of Gaza. Now, the idea behind it seems to be much larger, much broader in scope. And Trump administration officials say that they've invited around 50 countries to be a part of it, and that so far more than 24 have agreed to be a part of it. Now, among those invited includes a host of authoritarian leaders, including Russian President Vladimir Putin. And now, as you mentioned, several European allies, including the UK, are declining to participate at this point, citing concerns about that it could undermine the United Nations, Savannah.
All right, Gabe and Ellison covering a lot of territory for us this morning. Thank you both.
Let's bring in Robert English now for some analysis on this latest twist in the Greenland saga. Robert, good morning. Thanks for joining us again. So we still don't know exactly, of course, details are not there yet, this so-called framework of a deal on Greenland. We don't know what it involves. But what do you think ultimately made the president kind of back off a little bit when it came to those tariffs, when it came to saying, you know, I might use military force, ruling that out now? What do you think made him reevaluate this?
Yeah, I don't think he kind of backed off. He completely backed down. And, you know, the Europeans are being generous, allowing him a consolation prize, holding this Board of Peace ceremony at Davos and talking about a framework of a deal over the Arctic. But Trump conceded. Everyone understands that Trump lost, that he backed down. And he did so because the Europeans finally stood up for themselves, and instead of seeking to conciliate or make side deals, they stood united. They threatened their own counter tariffs. They aimed them at red states. They had the trade bazooka ready to go. And Trump got scared, right? The bond markets, the stock market started to tank, and he backed down. So we need to be clear exactly on who won and who lost and how much this has weakened America, not just in terms of Trump's bargaining power and his ability to threaten this way in the future, but also in terms of America's stature and prestige in the world. And that will be the most damaging long-run casualty of this reckless gambit of President Trump's.
Yeah, I want to ask you more about that. I mean, this whole saga, just truly, what kind of damage is it doing to our relationship with our European allies?
A lot of damage. You know, I would say over the past year of the second Trump administration, they've gone from shock, then dismay, and now it's really just open disgust. Right? Trump stood there for an hour and harangued the leaders of the world with insults, with threats, with grievances and falsehoods, as if he were addressing a MAGA rally at home. And as a Europe watcher, I have to tell you, the private and even now public expressions of disgust and dismay are really, really devastating. And I think America has essentially ceded the leadership of the free world, at least for the moment, to Mark Carney, right, the Canadian leader. And what he said was important, that going forward, they will have to seek to work around America, not with America. They will have to reduce their ties and their dependency on America because it can't be trusted not to bully them. And therefore, Canada and Europe are both building up their ties with Latin America, with China, to work around us more than with us.
Robert, with that in mind, and the damage that you do think it's done to these relationships, as we look to the future, what does this mean for President Trump's standing in the world, but also as we sort of think of the world order that's generally been in place since the end of World War II, with the U.S. leading that? What does this do to that?
It's hard to say how lasting the damage will be. For the moment, it seems like a really tectonic shift, and it's hard to imagine America regaining the trust and confidence that existed between us and our allies, you know, for the entire post-war period. In any short order, it'll take a new administration, it'll take decades of work to reestablish that. So Trump's personal prestige has taken a big hit, and America's as well. It's hard to predict the details, but I think at least a decade of repair before we get back anywhere near the level of trust we've enjoyed in preceding decades.
Robert English, thank you very much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Get ready, a massive winter snowstorm is coming together, and it has the potential to impact more than half of the U.S. this weekend. The storm, which is packing heavy snow and damaging ice, could create the worst conditions so far this winter.
Yeah, get this. He said about half the country, that's more than 120 million people under these winter alerts. It stretches from the southwest all the way up into the northeast. Meanwhile, tens of millions will also be under cold alerts. All these numbers are only expected to climb also. The storm is set to begin tomorrow and last through the weekend as it slowly makes its way across the country. Now, states of emergency have actually already been declared by officials in several states, including the Carolinas and Texas.
That's right, Texas. NBC News correspondent Ryan Chandler is there in Dallas. That tells you just how widespread this thing is. Ryan, several regions of the country, snow, ice, or a mix of both of those. What are the biggest concerns for those who are in the storm's path this weekend?
Well, Joe, Savannah, good morning. I think the biggest concerns at this point for life safety are on the highways and the power lines. States of emergency declared here in Texas as well as Georgia and the Carolinas. It's an all-hands-on-deck approach to prep the roads. TxDOT here is out with brine trucks trying to make them as safe as possible, but officials here in Dallas are warning that it's just not going to be safe to get out on the roads for the next few days. Power lines are also a big issue. Localized power outages could cause people to lose heat, which is a big concern. Texas is opening warming centers to make sure that everybody has a safe place to go if that does happen. But the message to stay safe from officials right now is just to stay home, get out now, and prep while you can so that you don't have to be on the roads once this freeze hits, Joe.
Ryan, as Joe mentioned, I mean, the fact that you're reporting on this from Texas says enough right there. And many people in that state, I'm sure, remember the massive winter storm that hit in 2021. I mean, really just tragic. It was blamed for nearly 250 deaths because of all these ripple effects, leaving millions without power across the state when it was so cold. How are officials bracing for this one? Are they more prepared now?
They say they are, and you're right. Texans are understandably very anxious every time we see the forecast turn this way. But ERCOT told us yesterday, that's the state power grid operator, they say they are stronger than they were 5 years ago. The state has really taken pains to improve their electrical grid since then to make sure that that never happens again. They've made their infrastructure more resilient to all kinds of weather, both heat and cold. They've invested more than $10 billion to bring more energy online onto the grid and create backup forms of power. So we don't expect to see some statewide grid failure like we saw in 2021, but people still could lose power because of freezing rain bringing down trees and power lines. But that's a local outage. It's different than an ERCOT issue.
And we see folks buying shovels there and buying some salt for the ice. Just for everyday folks, what's the best advice for how to prepare, especially if you're in a place like Dallas that just isn't used to getting much ice and snow?
Yeah, look, I think everybody needs to take this storm seriously, but the tips to stay safe are simple. Just stay home. Get out now to get all the supplies you need to stay warm, and make sure that you don't need to get out on the roads. Just wait it out until the ice thaws. Yes.
All right. Ryan Chandler in Dallas. Thank you so much.
Let's get you some forecast details so you can prepare for that bitter incoming winter blast with a check at your Morning News Now weather. We have meteorologist David Bigger with us this morning. David, good morning.
Good morning. As we go through the next couple of days, we're looking at a massive, disruptive, and damaging winter storm that will extend from the southern plains into the northeast. It's almost 2,000 miles long. Now, the storm is going to start up tomorrow, bringing snow and ice by the afternoon hours and dangerous travel after sunset. It will continue to expand off toward the east as we get into Saturday, including now a crippling ice storm that will lead to impossible travel conditions and the possibility of prolonged power outages as lines start to come down in some of the accumulating ice. And we're not done there. As we head into Sunday, snow and ice is going to continue with the potential for heavy snowfall across portions of the northeast. So here's what we're looking at snowfall-wise across the area. First of all, you can see just how big this looks across the entire country. But heading into the northeast, this is where we're seeing some of the heaviest snowfall from the Ohio Valley up into the northeast. And that purple coloring, that's as much as a foot of snow or even more in a few spots. And on top of that, we're also looking at accumulating ice through a good portion of the south. Just imagine how many airports are sitting in this. That's going to make for a lot of travel headaches and some very dangerous roadways because of the ice accumulation. And again, the potential for prolonged power outages since so many lines and so many trees may potentially start to lose branches here with the accumulating ice. Now, that's not the only thing we're talking about. We're also talking about some very cold air for today. Frigid Arctic air is going to be blowing into the northern plains. We're looking at potentially wind chills down as low as 40 to 50 degrees below. So on the actual thermometer itself, you might see -1 in Bismarck for today, about 10 degrees in Minneapolis. Tomorrow, even colder as that air continues to spill in. So now we're looking at about a degree below zero in Chicago, St. Louis about 17 degrees, and it's going to stay cold for a couple of days. So here's your 3-day forecast where you can see that for Kansas City, for example, we're only looking at single digits for Saturday, Sunday about 14 degrees, and by Monday only a little bit warmer at 19 degrees. That's a look at the forecast. Back to you.
All right, David, thank you so much.
We are learning new information this morning about a significant and up until now secret policy change for ICE officers during immigration operations.
Yeah, this is from an internal ICE memo, and it was dated May 12th of last year. It shows that ICE officers and agents were told they could forcibly enter homes of people subject to deportations without judicial warrants. The document, which appears to be from the acting ICE director, Todd Lyons, was shared with Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal by 2 whistleblowers.
NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley joins us now with more on this. Julia, good morning. Can you just walk us through the details of this memo and what it advises ICE officers to do during these immigration operations?
Well, basically, it's saying that if they need access to someone's private residence, their home, that they are able to go in without a warrant. Now, that is opposite how ICE is trained. We were able to go to their training and even talk to the professors who were teaching immigration law classes, who said they do need a warrant before they go into someone's home. Now, the times that I've seen warrants be signed, a magistrate judge will sign it in the case where ICE is targeting an individual. They believe they have the evidence they were in the country illegally. They often have evidence that they've committed some other crime besides being in the country illegally. In other words, it's because ICE has information that this person has broken the law, not just because they suspect there may be someone illegal in the house. That's the big difference here. ICE is pushing back on this memo, saying that it is still their policy, that they do need warrants before going in. But clearly, this whistleblower report points to another policy, and it's unclear exactly what guidelines current ICE officers have been given to follow. Most of the breaches, I will say, of that policy appear to be happening around cars, which some people may say has a different understanding. You might have a different understanding of privacy based on the Fourth Amendment and the Constitution in your home than you would in your car. So it's an ongoing debate. But clearly, there has been a policy push per this memo to tell officers that they can go into homes regardless of whether or not they've done the research and had the permission from a judge.
Julia, you just mentioned the Fourth Amendment. That's against unreasonable search and seizure. And you're kind of touching on this, but I guess just very bluntly, like, is this legal? And also tell us how DHS is responding to this memo having been made public.
Well, yeah, they're saying that this is not their policy, but it's hard, obviously, given the paper that everyone is looking at. And again, we don't know how many people were told to follow this versus another. But the Fourth Amendment does prevent the U.S. people in the United States, not just U.S. citizens, people living here, from unreasonable search and seizure. And that can mean someone searching your residence or seizing things that's unreasonable. And the way we define reasonable is whether or not a judge has signed off on giving law enforcement the power to go and search and seize. And to get a judge to agree to that, an ICE officer would have to go before a judge and give the evidence of why they thought this was a necessary use of law enforcement. And so now we're entering into a new phase if these ICE officers are able to make those decisions on the fly without having to show that evidence to a judge.
Julia, we know that Vice President J.D. Vance is expected to visit Minneapolis today. That's where protesters have been clashing with ICE officers for a few weeks over these immigration operations. The Pentagon has also put troops on standby with orders to prepare to deploy to Minnesota. Just where do things stand with the federal response to all this?
That's right. 2 Department of Defense officials told my colleague Courtney Kuby that there are now over 1,500 military troops now active duty ready to go in to Minneapolis if called. Now, what the president would have to do in order to get those troops to arrive would be to invoke the Insurrection Act. It's something that he has toyed with doing. We're often just trying to hear every word coming out from the White House, from Trump, from Stephen Miller, from Caroline Leavitt. Caroline Leavitt has said he has the power to do this. The last time the Insurrection Act was invoked was 1992 during the Rodney King riots that ended up with 12,000 arrests. There have been far fewer than that in the Minneapolis arrest. And we also know that only one person has died in Minneapolis during all this. That would be Renee Nicole Good at the hands of ICE officers, unlike Rodney King, where hundreds died during those riots. And so the president, to invoke the Insurrection Act, may be going a bit further than president has allowed in the past. But J.D. Vance is on the ground. This follows Attorney General Pam Bondi, who was recently in Minneapolis. It's certainly an area this White House is going to continue to talk about and continue to really pressure, because they want local law enforcement there to cooperate with them during their ICE operations. And they're basically accusing the city and the governor at this point of being complicit in breaking immigration law. And so that is a reason why they think they may need to invoke the Insurrection Act to quell protesters.
All right. Julia, thank you so much.
Well, a jury in Texas returned a not guilty verdict in the trial of a police officer who was charged with failing to act to stop the Uvalde school shooting. Former police officer Adrian Gonzalez was cleared of dozens of charges after being accused of not doing enough to help the children during the 2022 mass shooting at Robb Elementary School.
In each of the 29 counts, we, the jury, find the defendant, Adrian Gonzalez, not guilty.
Gonzalez was one of the first officers to arrive on scene of the shooting, which left 19 students and 2 teachers dead. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson has the details from the courthouse in Corpus Christi.
Yeah, former Uvalde Schools police officer Adrian Gonzalez has been found not guilty on 29 counts of child endangerment for the children who were killed, the 19 who were killed, and the 10 who survived the 2022 Robb Elementary School shooting. We saw as that not guilty verdict was read, Adrian Gonzalez put his head down, appearing very emotional. We also saw many of the members of the families of the victims, some of them wiping tears, others appearing stoic as they heard that not guilty verdict. Now, over the course of the past 2 weeks, this trial has gone on where that jury heard testimony, harrowing testimony from survivors, testimony from law enforcement officers who were on the scene, among others. And ultimately, they had to make that decision today, with the state saying that Adrian Gonzalez did not act, that he was told the direction that the shooter was going in, that he heard the gunshots, and that he did not act and did not act quickly enough to do all that he could to prevent this from happening. But we also heard from the defense saying that Adrian Gonzalez did act. He ran to someone who he thought was the shooter. It turned out that that person was not the shooter. And they also say that he eventually did go into the school, which many other officers did not do. And clearly the jury deciding that the verdict was going to be not guilty. They did not feel like he should be held criminally responsible in this case. So certainly a devastating outcome for the families, who had told me that while they were hopeful that they might get some sort of justice, they were not sure that they were going to get this guilty verdict. And of course, things did not go their way. But still, there is another case that is going to be brought, and that is, of course, with the former Uvalde Schools Police Chief Pete Arredondo, who is also set to go to trial on similar charges. Back to you.
All right, Priscilla, thank you so much. Well, NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris is here to help walk us through this verdict. Misty, good morning. Obviously, just such a tragedy, a heartbreak all around. But let's talk through kind of the legal process here in this 3-week-long trial. Prosecutors, they focus on a few things: the amount of time, of course, that it took for Officer Gonzalez to act, also whether or not he was following his training in what he did, and also testimony that alleged that these teachers really put themselves in harm's way to protect the children, while officers did not. How did the defense persuade a jury that he was not guilty of any of these charges?
Yeah, so this is a really difficult case, but where the defense actually hung its hat was on those minutes when Gonzalez arrived to the scene. So this case, from the prosecutor's perspective, was that he failed to act, and he could have actually stopped the shooter from ever entering the building. And prosecutors say he had about 3.5 minutes to do so. The defense questioned that timeline, said it was more like 1 minute and 45 seconds. Why does this matter? Well, the defense said that he did not know where the shooter was at that time. It was a chaotic scene. And so he actually did follow his training, and he acted reasonably under the circumstances. They also pointed to the fact that there were many other law enforcement officers who were involved, and of those officers, he was one of the first to actually enter the school building. So there were other factors that the defense said prosecutors were really ignoring when it came to his actions during that day.
You mentioned many. There were about 370
Yes.
officers who responded in some form or fashion that day. Only 2 were charged in the end. How much do you think that factored into the decision? I mean, was part of the defense, hey, you're scapegoating this guy when there were so many others who responded?
It was. It was about, why is this person the only one sitting in the defense chair? And there was a Department of Justice investigation that was conducted, and it was like 600 pages long. And it said that there were failures of law enforcement at every level. And remember, this wasn't just local police. This was federal officers that responded. It took 77 minutes for them to enter that classroom. So there were so many failures with that, and with respect to training, that the defense focused on that as well.
Priscilla mentioned that the former Uvalde School Police Chief, Pete Arredondo, he will also face trial. That has not been scheduled yet. But tell us about the differences here, the difference in charges that he's facing, the difference in responsibility they maybe both had.
So it's the same child endangerment charges, although it's 10 charges charges as opposed to 29, but it is a different set of facts. So he was the chief, he was the commander on site, and the facts surrounding his charges relate to failures to enter the classroom once those officers were in the building. That's that 77-minute time frame that we've heard so much about, that he did not treat the situation as an active shooter. So that case is in a holding pattern right now, but we'll see when that trial comes.
All right, Misty Maris, thank you as always.
On Capitol Hill, lawmakers voted to hold the Clintons in contempt of Congress. In a bipartisan vote, the House Oversight Committee held both former President Bill Clinton and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in contempt for failing to comply with a subpoena to answer questions about its Epstein investigation. The vote now advances to the full House, and if it passes, the Clintons will be referred to the Justice Department, where federal prosecutors will decide whether to prosecute the former First Family. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer, a Republican from Kentucky, says the Clintons' apparent close relationship with Epstein warrants an in-person appearance. The Clintons, though, have been pushing back. Their lawyers call the subpoenas, quote, invalid. Well, the first set of Epstein files released last month did include several photos of Bill Clinton. The Clintons have not been accused of any wrongdoing related to Epstein. The former president said he cut ties with Epstein before Epstein was accused of having sex with a minor back in 2006. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, he's accused of flying under the radar for years. Literally. More on the arrest of a man accused of pretending to be a pilot to catch hundreds of flights for free.
Wow. All right. Up first, though, after the break, the tearful testimony by Prince Harry in his high-profile legal fight against top British tabloids. We will be right back.
We are back with a closer look at a Supreme Court case that could have a big impact on the economy and how one key government agency operates. After 2 hours of oral arguments yesterday, the justices did appear skeptical of President Trump's ability to dismiss Federal Reserve Board member Lisa Cook.
Mr. Trump fired Cook last year over allegations of mortgage fraud, which she denies. A lower court ruled it was unconstitutional because Fed members can only be filed, quote, for cause. That requires evidence of wrongdoing. The Trump administration argues that once the president decides he has cause to fire a Fed board member, it is not reviewable by a court. Well, yesterday, both conservative and liberal justices appeared to be open to the idea that Cook should be able to challenge Mr. Trump's decision.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News senior Supreme Court reporter Lawrence Hurley. Lawrence, good to have you with us. So this is the first time ever a president has tried to fire a board member of the Fed. Several justices seem concerned about the precedent it could send, saying it could undermine the Fed's longstanding independence. That's important to not just our economy, but the global economy. Walk us through the key highlights from the arguments yesterday.
Yeah, I'm just going to focus on one particular interaction, which I think kind of sums the whole thing up, which was Justice Brett Kavanaugh, one of the conservative justices, really pushing this idea of, like, what is the point of having these four-cause protections that prevent firings without, without reason, if the president alone can decide what the reason is and his decision can't be reviewed by anyone, including courts. That kind of makes a mockery of the whole provision, right? So Kavanaugh is suggesting, along with other justices, that, in order for Lisa Cook to be removed, the Trump administration has to make more of a case as to why she should be removed, and that she should have a chance to have a hearing and contest that. It doesn't mean, the president can never fire a member of the Federal Reserve, but it just makes the bar a little bit higher in order to protect this kind of independence of that agency that was established by Congress.
By the way, the Trump administration, as we mentioned, it claims mortgage fraud is this cause for dismissing Lisa Cook. NBC News did obtain bank documents that appear to contradict that claim, and a lot of critics are essentially just saying that this is not actually about that wrongdoing, but this is part of that general effort by the Trump administration to ramp up pressure on the Fed, ultimately really focused on cutting those interest rates. But Lawrence, with that in mind, I guess partially what is actually at stake here, but also we mentioned both conservative and liberal justices seem to indicate here there could be a potential they think that she should be able to challenge this. So does it seem like they think that this was a step too far?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, the sort of elephant in the room here is whether the Trump administration has some kind of pretext for why it wants to remove Lisa Cook. And obviously, President Trump is pretty open about what he wants the Federal Reserve to do regarding interest rates, and he isn't happy about the fact they haven't done it. And some of the justices raised the issue of whether what Cook is alleged to have done actually even rises to the level of malfeasance that would require removal. So it's even possible the court could go even further than just saying Trump can't remove her now, and even say the bar is higher and he hasn't met that bar.
Lawrence, let's look beyond the Fed here, because there are questions about whether Mr. Trump can fire people serving on just what have long been considered independent agencies like, say, the Federal Trade Commission. And we know the court heard arguments last month related to the FTC. In that one, they appeared likely to side with the Trump administration. Help us understand what's different about what's being debated in that case as opposed to the one involving the Fed.
Yeah, I mean, this is where it gets a little complicated, to be honest. Even I'm not sure if I can explain exactly why the court has said that the Federal Reserve is somehow different from these other independent agencies, but it did do that last year. It says that the Federal Reserve has a unique history and tradition as a sort of independent body that somehow makes it more secure from presidential interference than something like the FTC, where the court has said the president can fire people without cause. So the court has been accused of some hypocrisy over that, but that's where we are.
All right, Lawrence, helping us make sense of everything here. We appreciate your time this morning. Thanks.
Well, today, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, are set to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. They say the talks will focus on a potential path to peace with Ukraine.
At Davos this morning, Witkoff did express optimism a deal was close after telling CNBC yesterday that land negotiations are on the table.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons. He is in Dubai. Keir, good morning. So Russian officials seem to be a little less optimistic about a deal being within reach, which is maybe not a surprise. But what are they saying about what they plan to focus on today in Moscow?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be a surprise, Savannah. Frankly, they didn't say anything, really. Dmitry Peskov, President Putin's spokesman in the Kremlin, basically refused to answer when he was asked about the enthusiasm on the American side. Look, my expectation will be, unless President Putin has had a personality transplant, that he'll walk in and once again say that he thought he had an agreement with the talks in Alaska and that he wants the root causes of the war to be addressed, which is code for President Putin saying he wants all of his maximalist demands to be met. They are also talking, it looks like, in that meeting about the invitation by President Trump for President Putin to join the Board of Peace, which is a very interesting question because, on the one hand, it would bring President Putin onto the world stage, backed by President Trump, if you like, and that might be very attractive to him. On the other hand, the Board of Peace increasingly looks like an alternative to the United Nations. And the United Nations, of course, the Russians have a permanent place on the Security Council. The Board of Peace is the chairman of the Board of Peace is President Trump, and he has a veto over everything. So will President Putin like that ultimately? So it'll be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, Keir, and Witkoff says, these land deals are obviously one of the remaining obstacles in the peace talks that has long been a sticking point. Yeah. What do we know about those negotiations?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, land deals are a big deal, though, to state the obvious. It does look as if President Zelensky will be prepared to give up some land for security agreements, which, Joe, goes back to my original point, which is to say that what the Russians have said again and again is that they want their maximalist demands met, which includes no NATO forces in Ukraine, a pulling back of NATO, if you like, really effectively saying they don't want security guarantees for Ukraine. So whether Steve Witkoff thinks he's managed to solve all of that, and again, another example, who controls the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, Steve Witkoff tends to be very, very positive, let's put it that way, when he walks into these negotiations. Historically, quite often it turns out that things aren't as rosy as he paints them, but we'll see.
President Trump is also set to meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky today at Davos. Kira, of course, as you know, is the U.S. any closer to meeting those security guarantees that Ukraine has been demanding? Another big sticking point here.
Yeah, good question. President Zelensky had said he wouldn't go to Davos unless he was going to sign security guarantees and reconstruction agreements with President Trump. Then at one stage in the past few days, Zelensky said he was going to stay in Kyiv because his first priority was Ukraine, and he wanted to help with the damage done from continuing Russian bombardments. You wonder whether that was code for, I'm not sure what I'm going to get in Davos, but now he is in Davos and he is going to meet with President Trump. The question of what security guarantees the US and Europe are prepared to give the Ukrainians, there's been a lot of negotiation. I think they really have made progress. But whether or not that's a deal that's done is a difficult one to know until we hear from them. I will say again, of course, though, the Russians don't like it. So how do you square that circle?
All right. Keir Simmons, thank you.
We're staying overseas now with the legal showdown between Prince Harry and the publisher of prominent British tabloids. The Duke of Sussex got visibly emotional on the stand Wednesday. He was testifying in a trial over allegations of the invasion of his privacy. The publisher denies any wrongdoing. NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez is in London with more.
An emotional Prince Harry on the witness stand in London, looking close to tears as he accused Britain's tabloid newspapers of hounding him and his wife Meghan, saying, "They continue to come after me. They've made my wife's life an absolute misery, my lord." Alongside celebrities like Elton John and actress Elizabeth Hurley, Harry is suing the owners of the Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday, accusing them of using illegal methods like phone hacking to get details about his personal life for stories from 2001 to 2013.
He felt he couldn't trust those around him, and that had an enormous impact on him.
Harry has blamed the media for the death of his mother, Princess Diana, and suggested she may have been one of the first victims of phone hacking.
She wasn't paranoid. She was absolutely right of what was happening to her. And she's not around today to find out the truth.
The newspapers say their stories were based on legitimate sources in the prince's, quote, leaky social circle. And over 2 hours of cross-examination, Harry was asked why he waited more than a decade to sue. He replied that before his public break with the royal family, he was bound by the palace's policy to never complain, never explain.
And the trial here is expected to last 2 months. Harry says if he wins, he's not looking for a financial payout, but does want an apology and accountability. I'll send it back to you.
All right, Raph, thank you.
Well, coming up on Morning News Now, out of pocket, one man's 6-mile ambulance ride leads to a $6,000 bill.
If nobody pushes and people get tired of chasing, they'll just give up and pay it.
But you were not going to do that.
I didn't feel comfortable being taken advantage of like that.
When we return, hear how he was able to fight back against his insurance company. We'll be right back.
We are back now with another story in our series, The Cost of Denial, where we investigate the challenges people face with insurance in the healthcare system.
NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson reports on one man's medical emergency, the ambulance that came to health, and the bill that left him stunned.
It happened so fast.
So I was here preparing some batter for French toast and really started to feel unwell. So I just kind of grabbed on to the countertop a little bit.
Billino says he didn't have time to think.
Had you ever felt anything like that before?
Absolutely not. I had no idea what was happening. And it was scary.
No time to ask about the ambulance service taking him from his church in Springfield, Massachusetts to the hospital.
By the time I reached here, I couldn't stand anymore. So I was laying flat on the concrete when the ambulance pulled in.
The source of the pain last May, 2 kidney stones. The source of the pain today, a surprise bill from the nation's largest private ambulance company, AMR, American Medical Response.
And then I got this letter in the mail from AMR, the ambulance provider, stating that my insurance provider was declining payment and that potentially I'd be responsible for a little over $5,800 in ambulance expense.
It was a 6-mile ride. That's almost $1,000 a mile.
That's a very aggressive rate, yes.
His insurer, Cigna, agreed to pay $854, leaving Enos with a balance of more than $5,000 because the ambulance company is out of network.
What did you think when you saw that bill?
I thought it had to be a mistake.
In 2022, Congress passed a law to protect people from surprise medical bills, but ground ambulance charges were left out. 22 states have moved to remedy the exclusion, but Massachusetts isn't one of them. Enos decided to fight.
It's literally taken hours and hours over weeks and months to deal with this, and it's stressful.
AMR and Cigna blamed each other. Cigna said ambulance companies are among the most egregious billers in the healthcare system, and that many choose not to contract with health insurers, which allows them to charge significantly higher rates. AMR told NBC News Enos' situation was the result of the complexity of the system and proved the need for patients to advocate on their behalf.
Basically, my bill establishes a copay.
Massachusetts State Senator Michael Moore wants to end surprise charges.
You call EMS, you pay $100.
Whether or not the ambulance service is in my health insurance network or not.
Your cost is $100.
So who pays the rest?
The rest we picked up by the insurance provider.
In Bill Enos' case, after NBC News asked about his bill, Cigna agreed to cover the majority of it.
I think if nobody pushes and people get tired of chasing, they'll just give up and pay it.
But you were not going to do that.
I didn't feel comfortable being taken advantage of like that. I think it needed to be fought.
If you get a surprise ambulance bill, there are a couple of things you can do. First of all, you should appeal any charges. And secondly, you want to check with your state to see if your state is one of those that protects consumers from such charges. In Bill's case, he paid a small yearly fee to his hometown to cover any kind of ambulance fees that his health insurance didn't cover. But when he needed an ambulance, he wasn't in his hometown, so it didn't apply. I'm Ann Thompson. Back to you.
Thank you, Ann. Coming up, housing overhaul. President Trump laying out plans to make homes more affordable for everyday Americans.
When we return, more on his proposal and why some experts are skeptical. Your Money Minute is next on Morning News Now. Moving on, let's dive into some money news now, starting with President Trump outlining his plan to make owning a home a little more affordable.
NBC News business and economy reporter Allie Canal is here with your Money Minute. Allie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Yes, so housing was a big focus for President Trump at Davos, a key part of his affordability push heading into the midterm elections. At the World Economic Forum, he laid out more defined plans, from pushing for lower mortgage rates to limiting large investors from buying single-family homes, saying housing should be, quote, for people, not corporations. The caveat here, though, experts say it's still unclear how much these moves would actually lower prices or how quickly any relief would reach buyers. And sticking with politics, a new push on Capitol Hill to tighten controls on AI chip exports. A House panel has advanced the AI Overwatch Act, giving Congress power to review and potentially block sales of advanced U.S.-made chips to countries like China. The bill, which still needs full House and Senate approval, targets high-end chips from companies like NVIDIA, including its top-of-the-line Blackwell chips. Remember, this is technology that powers everything from AI models and data centers to autonomous driving and military systems. And from chips to cookies, Insomnia Cookies is hosting its first ever in-store date night during Valentine's Week, with reservations at select locations nationwide, including New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, and Philadelphia. The catch, though, you have to be a rewards member to book, but even if you're not, there's still something sweet. The late-night cookie chain is also debuting new flavors like red velvet and chocolate lava cake just in time for February. And y'all, I don't know about you, but I am a huge Insomnia Cookies fan. I've DoorDashed it more times than I'd like to admit. And I'm conveniently free Valentine's week. If anyone out there wants to take me out
there. I
like a cheap date.
Well, you can do the White Castle for the entree.
I love that.
They do that on Valentine's.
And then get my M&M cookie for dessert. It's a win-win for me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I do love those cookies. Thanks, Allie. Of course. Coming up on Morning News Now, a beloved teacher getting a hero send-off after joining the Navy.
I felt incredibly grateful that I got to have that kind of send-off, or even just know that what I was doing mattered.
Up next, how his students came together for a farewell to remember. We'll be right back. We're ending this hour with an all-American send-off.
Hundreds of students at a school in Idaho arranged a surprise farewell for a beloved PE teacher who is leaving for a new adventure. NBC Nightly News anchor Tom Yamas has this story.
The cheers say it all. Students at Eagle Rock Middle School in Idaho Falls clutching American flags and surprising phys ed teacher Sean Steele, who's about to begin his service in the U.S. Navy. The choir singing Anchors Away, a song long associated with the Navy. It's especially meaningful for Steele, whose father and grandfather also served.
My grandpa was in the Navy for 20 years. My dad was in for 26 years, and getting the opportunity and chance to just be a part of that, it's a real honor in and of itself.
A hero send-off for a teacher loved by so many students.
That's always what I've tried to do, is just be the good that walks into the room and let the people that are around you feel like you're making things better with your presence. I felt incredibly grateful that I got to have that kind of send off, or even just know that what I was doing mattered.
And he knows they'll be with him moving forward. Our thanks to Tom Yamas for that story. That is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, snow way out. A capital M massive winter storm setting its sweeping sights on millions in the coming days, from Texas to right here in the Northeast. Folks in NYC, even Washington, D.C., preparing to weather what could be the biggest showing of the white stuff in years. So what should you expect in your neighborhood this weekend? We are tracking the latest path in just a moment. Also this morning, not guilty. The former Uvalde elementary school police officer accused of failing to act in that tragic 2022 massacre, now walking free. The emotional scenes from inside that Texas courtroom after 7 hours of jury deliberations. Anger from some of the family's victims as the heavily criticized response from law enforcement re-enters the national spotlight. Plus, another helping of good news for folks on those popular weight loss drugs, the promising new research on patients' broader gut health and how those jabs could actually lower your risk of developing colon cancer. And get this, we could just be a little over 2 weeks away from NASA's next trip to the final frontier, a historic mission to orbit the moon. Our own Al Roker introduces you to the crew of Artemis, 3 Americans and a lone Canadian, already willing and able to launch humankind into a bold new era of space exploration. We're going to talk about that a lot this year.
We certainly are, and I love Al on the space beat.
Exactly. Next thing you know, we're going to send him to the moon. Do the weather.
Bet he'd be up for it, yeah.
All right, we are going to begin this hour with that brutal winter storm that's targeting a big chunk of the country.
Yeah, the weather system is expected to send temperatures plummeting and create dangerous snow and ice storms for millions. Officials have already begun declaring a state of emergency, with the storm targeting parts of the Midwest, Northeast, and even the South. NBC News correspondent Ryan Chandler is in Dallas. That tells you something with what to expect from this massive Arctic blast. Ryan, good morning.
Savannah, good morning. That's right. This is a very serious storm here. It's the kind of weather we just don't see here in the South very often. Days below freezing that could make the roads very dangerous, knock so many people out of power. A lot of people taking this seriously. Hundreds, more than 100 million bracing for this Arctic blast.
This morning, a massive storm system set to sweep across the U.S., with 120 million Americans under winter alerts for the weekend. With snow already falling, the upcoming storm system predicted to span more than 2,000 miles, putting every major metro from New York City to Dallas in its path. Residents prepping for a crippling freeze.
We're getting gallons of water and packets of tuna and salmon for the cats.
Already, temperatures have tumbled into the single digits and lower in the northern plains. where the wind chill could reach an almost incomprehensible negative 50 degrees. Conditions so cold, some are on the lookout for exploding trees.
If you hear loud noises coming from like the woods or the forest, it's the trees exploding.
That rare phenomenon happens when the sap inside freezes and expands, causing so-called frost cracking on tree trunks. In Pennsylvania, frigid conditions sending recess indoors.
I think it's fun to play in.
And road crews scrambling to find enough salt. And in the skies, multiple airlines already issuing notices of potential cancellations and delays in dozens of cities, including Atlanta, D.C., and Houston. Throughout Texas, anxiety looms amid memories of the last major storm in 2021 that knocked out power to millions in the state and was blamed for nearly 250 deaths.
Considering what happened last time, I'm worried a little bit.
The state's power grid operator issuing a weather watch, but expects to have plenty of supply to meet demand.
Yeah, a lot of worry here, but the good news from the grid operator, they say they are stronger than they've been in the past and do not expect to have any issues like we saw 5 years ago. Doesn't mean we won't see power outages, though. Localized outages from freezing rain, taking down power lines and trees, still a massive concern here and across the South. But guys, the bottom line right now is get out now, get all your supplies so that you can get home and stay off the roads until all that ice thaws. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Brian, thank you. Stay warm.
Now let's check in with meteorologist David Bigger for more details about that massive winter storm. David, good morning.
Good morning. As we go through the next couple of days, we're looking at a massive, disruptive, and damaging winter storm that will extend from the southern plains into the northeast. It's almost 2,000 miles long. Now, the storm is going to start up tomorrow, bringing snow and ice by the afternoon hours and dangerous travel after sunset. It will continue to expand off toward the east as we get into Saturday, including now a crippling ice storm that will lead to impossible travel conditions and the possibility of prolonged power outages as lines start to come down in some of the accumulating ice. And we're not done there. As we head into Sunday, snow and ice is going to continue with the potential for heavy snowfall across portions of the northeast. So here's what we're looking at snowfall-wise across the area. First of all, you can see just how big this looks across the entire country. But heading into the northeast, this is where we're seeing some of the heaviest snowfall from the Ohio Valley up into the northeast. And that purple coloring, that's as much as a foot of snow or even more in a few spots. And on top of that, we're also looking at accumulating ice through a good portion of the south. Just imagine how many airports are sitting in this. That's going to make for a lot of travel headaches and some very dangerous roadways because of the ice accumulation. And again, the potential for prolonged power outages since so many lines and so many trees may potentially start to lose branches here with the accumulating ice. Now, that's not the only thing we're talking about. We're also talking about some very cold air for today. Frigid Arctic air is going to be blowing into the northern plains. We're looking at potentially wind chills down as low as 40 to 50 degrees below. So on the actual thermometer itself, you might see -1 in Bismarck for today, about 10 degrees in Minneapolis. Tomorrow, even colder as that air continues to spill in. So now we're looking at about a degree below zero in Chicago, St. Louis about 17 degrees, and it's going to stay cold for a couple of days. So here's your 3-day forecast where you can see that for Kansas City, for example, we're only looking at single digits for Saturday. Sunday, about 14 degrees, and by Monday, only a little bit warmer at 19 degrees. That's a look at the forecast. Back to you.
All right, David, thank you.
Well, for even more on this massive storm, let's bring in climate and weather reporter at the Washington Post, Jason Salmon. Now, Jason, thanks very much for joining us. So, I mean, I think one of the things that's super just kind of startling about this storm, right, is just how widespread these weather alerts are, how much of the country is impacted. Where do you think this storm could end up ranking historically?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a big one for such a big area. And, you know, here in the D.C. area, we're talking about 6 to 10 inches of snow and an outside chance, you know, if the snow doesn't change to sleet and freezing rain quickly, that we could see upwards of 10 inches. And if that happens, it would be the biggest storm here since at least 2019 and even 2016. So we're starting to get preparations in place here in the D.C. area for a significant winter storm here.
In an article you wrote this week, you mentioned this storm could produce the most snow in Washington, D.C. since 2016. That blizzard was appropriately nicknamed Snowzilla. I'm curious if we have any nicknames for this time around. But more than that, anytime you're in an area that doesn't get snow that much, that frequently, they don't tend to maybe invest in the equipment they need to clear it. Do you think that region is ready for something like this?
You know, it's our first event of the year, and it's always an adventure. I mean, fortunately, with this storm, we've had a lot of lead time. You know, we've been talking about this since Sunday and Monday, and this first flake's probably not coming until Saturday night between about 6 and 10 o'clock. So plenty of time for crews to get their act together, get ready, get deployed. And then the challenge with this storm is just that it's going to be so cold afterwards. So we're going to be dealing with the effects for quite a while.
Yeah, and you talk about that's notable because of the temperature, the intensity, just how cold it is, also the longevity, how long those low temperatures might last. And then, of course, along with that comes ice and then the dangers that creates. What kind of disruption could just how cold it's going to get cause?
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is going to be the neighborhood roads, the secondary roads. Those are going to take a long time to get cleared because often in the D.C. area and a lot of areas in the Mid-Atlantic and South where you get these winter storms, it thaws pretty quickly after the storm. In this case, that's not happening. In fact, in the D.C. area, we may see highs in the 20s. For the entire upcoming week, meaning this snow and ice isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So some schools may be out for multiple days because it's going to take so long for the crews to get to those roads, which will be pretty treacherous until they're cleared.
Jason Samenow, I hope you are safe and cozy as this descends on your city. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
All right, in Texas, a jury returned a not guilty verdict in the trial of Uvalde school police officer Adrian Gonzalez. He was charged with failing to act in the 2022 mass shooting at Robb Elementary School, where 19 students and 2 teachers were killed. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson was inside the courthouse when the verdict was read. Priscilla, good morning.
Yeah, Joe, good morning. It took the jury 7 hours of deliberations to come back with that not guilty verdict for former officer Adrian Gonzalez. He was charged with 29 counts of child endangerment, one for each of the children, the 19 children who died on that day, and the 10 others who survived.
In each of the 29 counts, we, the jury, find the defendant, Adrian Gonzalez, not guilty.
Overnight, a surprisingly swift verdict for Uvalde School's police officer, Adrian Gonzalez. After just 7 hours of deliberations, the jury finding him not guilty on all 29 counts of child abandonment or endangerment. Gonzalez, the first officer on the scene of the horrific 2022 mass shooting at Robb Elementary School, had been accused of not engaging the shooter. He did not take the stand in his own defense, speaking for the first time after the verdict.
Thank you for the jury for considering all the evidence and making that verdict.
The verdict comes nearly 4 years after one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history, when a teenage gunman killed 19 students and 2 teachers. Victims' families emotional and angry about the decision. What message did this jury send with this not guilty?
Yeah, children don't matter. I mean, that's it. That cops matter more than children.
The message is clear. If you're an officer, you don't have to do anything.
The 2-week trial was held outside of Uvalde after the defense argued Gonzalez was unlikely to receive a fair trial in the town. At times in the courtroom, emotions running high. The sister of Irma Garcia, one of the teachers killed in the attack, removed from the courtroom after this outburst. A Justice Department report on the shooting found cascading failures among the 376 officers on the scene that day, but only Gonzalez and 1 other officer were charged criminally.
Historically, in the United States, we have not held law enforcement officers responsible for failing to prevent crime, and in particular, for failing to prevent crimes like murder or intentional killings.
And the only other officer charged in law enforcement's botched response was former Uvalde Schools Police Chief Pete Arredondo. His trial date has not yet been set. Joe?
All right, Priscilla, thank you.
Well, this morning, President Trump hosted a signing ceremony for his controversial Board of Peace at the World Economic Forum in Davos. It's a group of countries he leads that is aimed at ending global conflicts, but many allies declined to participate over concerns it could undermine the United Nations. It comes after the president called off his threatened tariffs against 8 European countries over his wish to seize Greenland, following the announcement of a framework for a future deal on the Danish territory. NBC News Chief White House Correspondent Peter Alexander has the latest for us from Davos. Peter, good morning.
Good morning to you. The president's claims of a possible deal on Greenland, including his retreat from those economic and military threats, really diffuses the looming crisis with America's allies, even if that framework falls far short of his demand for ownership of the island. And this morning, the president is formalizing another dramatic move that critics warn disrupts the world order, his proposed board of peace that puts himself right at the center. President Trump wrapping up his whirlwind visit to Switzerland this morning, touting the first formal meeting of his so-called board of peace.
This board has the chance to be one of the most consequential bodies ever created, and it's my enormous honor to serve as its chairman.
Trump administration officials say more than 24 countries have agreed to join, out of more than 50 invited. Among them, a host of authoritarian leaders, including Russia's Vladimir Putin, who is still considering the offer. Several European allies, including the United Kingdom, declining, citing concerns the board could undermine the United Nations. President Trump arrived here amid mounting tensions with those same U.S. allies over his desire to take ownership of Greenland. But yesterday, in a number of surprise moves, the president pulled back on his recent plan to impose tariffs on European countries and his threats of possible military force in Greenland, while also announcing he's reached, quote, the framework of a future deal over Greenland with NATO after meeting with its Secretary General. When pressed, providing no details.
Well, we have a concept of a deal.
The president insisting the deal would be forever.
Does it still include the United States having ownership of Greenland like you've said you wanted?
It's a long-term deal, and I think it puts everybody in a really good position.
The New York Times, citing 3 senior officials familiar with the talks, reports that in a separate meeting, NATO officials discussed a compromise in which Denmark would give the U.S. sovereignty over small pockets of Greenland, where the U.S. could build military bases. But an existing agreement dating back decades already allows the U.S. to expand its military presence in Greenland. Overnight, the Secretary General was asked if Greenland will remain a Danish territory as part of any deal.
That issue did not come up anymore in my conversations tonight with the president.
These last 24 hours again demonstrating how the U.S.'s America First president is still single-handedly driving the global agenda. President Trump this morning meeting with a series of leaders, among them Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, as he tries to advance a plan to end the war with Russia before he flies back to Washington today. Back to you.
All right, Peter, thank you.
Let's talk more about Greenland with Marisol Maddox. She is a senior Arctic fellow at the Institute of Arctic Studies at Dartmouth College, so the perfect person to speak with here. Thanks for joining us. First of all, let's do a little history here. Tell us about Greenland's historic ties with Denmark and why this place we so rarely talk about, at least till now, is so strategically important in the Arctic.
Yeah, so Greenland has been a part of the Kingdom of Denmark for a very long time. They've been on this really long journey towards becoming their own people. So really, it was World War II that showed the significance of the location of Greenland. At that time, it was a really important place to be able to resupply our planes that were associated with the Allied war effort. The Nazis were very interested in Greenland because of how important weather stations are there for being able to forecast weather in Europe. So that was, partially why the United States was asked by Denmark when Denmark was invaded by Germany in 1940 to go into Greenland. There was an agreement that was signed with the Danish ambassador so that the U.S. would go. That was when we built up a lot of our the military bases, our infrastructure, and it was really to be able to protect Greenland from the Nazis and further aggression. And then, of course, after that, 1949 was when NATO was created, and then 1951 was this defense agreement that the clip just showed that really is the foundation for the U.S. having a permanent military presence in Greenland. And, that is predicated upon the existence of NATO being a thing, and also with having due regard for the sovereignty of the Kingdom of Denmark, recognizing that at that time, Greenland did not have the level of sovereignty that they have today. And I'm happy to discuss that further if you like.
Let's talk actually about about America's existing footprint there. We know we have a military base, but walk through kind of the relationship with the U.S., what our presence looks like.
Yeah, so the U.S. has really scaled back our presence in Greenland. We used to have over a dozen bases, and then it was really after the Cold War we scaled it back just because we were focused on other parts of the world with the global war on terror. And so right now we have Patuxent Space Base, which is a really important base for being able to detect and monitor any type of incoming aerospace threats. We do need to be adding new capabilities, the ability to shoot down missiles that are coming, over the top of the world. That's, something that's kind of been a part of the policy discussions, up to this point. But we really have pared our presence back. And Denmark has recently stepped up and invested $13.7 billion US into new defense infrastructure, things like radar, F-35s, surveillance patrol aircraft, long-range drones. The Greenland ice sheet, which covers 80% of Greenland, is a mile high at the highest point. And so there are places where the radar from Patuxent, which is in the northwestern part of Greenland, if you're looking east, which is looking towards the GI-UK gap, which is this really strategic choke point for looking at Russian submarine activity that's coming down from the Northern Fleet into the North Atlantic. The radar cuts out because of the height of the ice sheet, and so this is something where we have something called the Permanent Committee, where it's a dedicated forum for discussing defense concerns, so that the Denmark still has the authority for defense for Greenland. And so we brought this issue up, and Denmark agreed to then pay to put in a radar installation on the Faroe Islands, which is further east from Greenland. So I think you have to kind of zoom out to see the bigger picture here of the threats and what do we need to be able to detect, track, and defend against any of them.
All right. Marisol Maddox, thanks so much for joining us and sharing your expertise. We appreciate it.
Well, this morning, former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton are facing the prospect of criminal charges. The House Oversight Committee voted this week to hold them in contempt of Congress for failing to comply with a subpoena to answer questions in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles joins us from Washington with more. Ryan, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. And the Clintons were given multiple opportunities to find a way to comply with the subpoena, but it wasn't enough for the Oversight Committee. The bipartisan vote will now go to the House floor with the potential of a criminal indictment in their near future.
Former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton are now on the verge of a major legal battle.
The motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Both Republicans and Democrats voting to hold the pair in contempt of Congress for failing to appear for a deposition as part of an investigation into the actions of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
The Clintons' testimony is critical to understanding Epstein's sex trafficking network and the ways he sought to curry favor and influence to shield himself from scrutiny.
The Clintons have not been accused of any specific wrongdoing and said they have nothing of substance to offer the committee. But Bill Clinton's name and picture have repeatedly popped up in the slow release of the files. And even some Democrats believe the couple should appear to answer questions.
I do think it's important that we say unequivocally that regardless of who is in the Epstein files, regardless of what party they are, the truth should come out.
The next stage would be a full vote of the House, which could lead to a prosecution by the Department of Justice. But Chairman James Comer said there is still time for them to comply.
Is there still an opportunity for the Clintons to negotiate some sort of satisfaction of the subpoena, even though you've taken this step with contempt?
There's always an opportunity.
The contempt vote comes as the House prepares to hear from former special counsel Jack Smith, who is set to testify in an open hearing on his attempts to prosecute President Trump for his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election and mishandling of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Republicans have accused Smith of being part of an effort to weaponize the DOJ against Trump for political reasons. But in a closed-door hearing last month, Smith said he was following the evidence and the rule of law.
If asked whether to prosecute a former president based on the same facts today, I would do so regardless of whether that president was a Republican or a Democrat.
And Smith has no plans to back down in today's public hearing. In his prepared opening statement obtained by NBC News, Smith will tell the committee that he's not a politician and will say, quote, "Our investigation developed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that President Trump engaged in criminal activity." Savannah?
All right, Ryan, thank you.
The spotlight remains on Minneapolis, with Vice President J.D. Vance set to arrive there in a matter of hours. Violent clashes between protesters and ICE officers continue to intensify across the city. And the nation's Border Patrol commander, Gregory Bovino, was even caught on camera yesterday deploying gas and getting aggressive with protesters.
Meanwhile, a leaked memo is revealing that ICE officers were told they can forcibly enter homes during immigration raids without arrest warrants. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa is in Minneapolis with the latest here. Maggie, good morning.
Hey there, the vice president traveling here today to, among other things, meet with ICE officers and, quote, reinforce the White House's unwavering support. That's according to a White House official. And this high-profile visit comes as tensions here on the ground soar. One of the latest clashes involving one of the most prominent figures in the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. It's Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino, who was seen on camera yesterday throwing a canister into an angry crowd after warning protesters multiple times that it was gas. Now, DHS says this whole thing started because officers, including Bovino, were going gas station to gas station in the area trying to use a bathroom, and that they kept getting turned away, that protesters started to, their word, stalk them. There was a clash, and it devolved to what you see in that video. In the meantime, another major flashpoint developing here on the ground, a local school district sounding alarms saying 4 of their students have been taken into ICE custody, including a 5-year-old boy detained with his father in their driveway. The district alleges that another adult at the home begged agents to leave the child with them, but the agents refused. Now, NBC News reached out to DHS overnight for comment. The agency didn't get back to us, but they did tell the Washington Post that their policy is to ask parents if they want to be removed with their children or be placed with another person designated by the parent. And all of that comes as the family of Renee Good, the woman shot and killed here by an ICE officer just over 2 weeks ago, her family releasing their own independent autopsy results, saying that they had one performed on their own, and it showed that she had 3 gunshot wounds total, 1 in her left arm, the other the right side of her chest, and both of those were described as not immediately life-threatening. The 3rd gunshot wound, and we don't know which order these came in the left side of her head near her temple. Those results released as we're still awaiting the official Hennepin County autopsy results, which have not been released to the public yet. I'll send it back to you.
All right, Maggie, thank you. There's much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including some promising new research on those popular weight loss drugs, why one medical expert is now saying the broader pros of treatment starting to outweigh the cons.
First, after the break, continuing coverage of one of our top stories this morning, millions bracing for the impact of a massive winter storm this weekend, how you can best prepare for those freezing temps and the snow. It's next.
Welcome back. More than 100 million people across the U.S. are bracing for a bitter winter storm this weekend, with wind chills expected as low as minus 50 degrees in some areas.
With the temps dipping, forecasters warn driving conditions could be dangerous because of icy roads. In some states, it could be too cold to be outside for any extended period of time. Even across the South, temps could be well below normal.
NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung is here with some tips to keep yourself, your family, your home safe against this brutal winter weather. Brian, I mean, negative, that doesn't even sound like Earth.
Remarkable.
Sounds like we're talking about the moon or
I've
something.
experienced it too, by the way.
I was going to say, in Minnesota, I feel like,
You're in and out quick and you cover everything. Although people will still go out for a run.
No, I knew you were going to say that. That's insane. Okay, this is also, though, going to I mean, Joe's used to it in somewhere like Minnesota.
Yep.
People in Texas, people in Florida, not always used to weather like this.
Right.
How can people get their homes ready if it's not something they're used to?
Yeah, we heard that forecast earlier in the show. This
Yeah.
is some serious stuff. So I think the first thing that people need to think about is making sure that they're efficiently heating their homes. So a few things that people people should be doing. First off, cleaning your heating system. Your furnaces can get clogged up, and it's generally a good idea to clean your furnace at least once a year. Also, seal your drafts. There's a lot of leakage in your house, let's say under the doors, for example, where a heat can escape. Make sure you plug them up. And then lastly, close the fireplace damper. Ironically, that is a place where a lot of people are losing heat. If you're not actively using it as a fireplace, make sure that it's closed so that you're not losing all that heat, basically flowing up to the top of your house.
And of course, if you're going to use it, make sure it's open again.
Exactly, yes, right. Critical.
There. So far, heating costs are up nearly 10% this year, and I don't think people are going to be cutting back this weekend. What are some of the things, though, you can do to try and save on energy?
Yeah, and by the way, the average expectation is that the household, average American household, will spend almost $1,000 on heating their home this winter, so it is very expensive. Some cost-saving tips, according to Con Edison: turn on your humidifiers. In fact, they say that having a humidifier on in your house is going to do a better job at dispersing the heat. That's a good tip. Also, if you're going to be stuck inside in the snow anyway and you're baking cookies, turning on that oven is a good way to get some of that heat in your kitchen and through the rest of your house as well. Space heaters, I know a lot of people tend to rely on those. If you do have a home heating system, think of your space heater as more of a backup. The reason being, space heaters take up more energy than your installed already home system already has.
Okay, as a newish homeowner, when you hear about the idea of your pipes freezing, especially as a Southern California girl, and you're like, okay, that sounds like that's going to cost you a lot. What do you need to keep in mind when it comes to your plumbing?
Yeah, and this is where the prep really comes in handy. First off, inspect the parts of your home that do tend to be more vulnerable to icing over, like, for example, your attic, your basement, your garage is another one. And if you see exposed pipes, try to insulate them before the storm. Drain your hoses, close the inside valves, and in some cases, if you know that there are certain pipes that tend to be an issue in previous storms, keep the water running. Even if it's just a trickle, it's going to be a good way to make sure that there's no water sitting in there that could ice over. And then lastly, if your pipes do freeze over, it has happened before, thaw them using warm blankets that you basically dipped into warm or hot water. That's a good way to thaw them out.
We used to use blow dryers. I don't know if you're supposed to do that, but we would use
I think the wet towels is a better way to do it.
Is a better way. That's good to know.
Too much heat in one go might actually make it easier to
All right, good to know. All right, let's switch gears and talk about your car. What do you want to do just to make sure you're safe in case you end up on the side of the road and it's freezing? What are the best things to do?
Well, I mean, the side of the road is certainly one issue, but I think people even starting their cars after the winter storm is going to be an issue. So first off, as your car is parked in your driveway ahead of this storm, make sure that you're checking all the tire pressures. That tends to be the first place where people run into issues during these winter storms. You lose a lot of pressure in those tires. Get winter tires or snow chains if there is a lot of accumulation headed your way. Check your antifreeze levels as well, and then add an ice repellent to your windshield to make sure that you don't have that icy view, so that it prevents you from being able to drive. And one last thing I would add here is have a pair of jump cables in your car, because I know a lot of batteries tend to die during this cold, during these cold winter storms. And you definitely don't want to get stuck. If you have those jump cables, at least you have the option to start it.
Let's talk about just ourselves, our bodies. What do you wear in this kind of cold? How long is it even possible or safe to be out in it?
Yeah, so layer up. At least 3 layers is kind of the advice here. If you can go more, I would say go even higher than that. Cover your hands, head, and feet. Those are the real areas where you can risk frostbite. And then lastly, just stay inside if the wind chill is especially below 13 degrees. I mean, you're talking about negative 50. Even 13 degrees can be too cold if you're out there for extended periods of time, which people will be as they're shoveling snow. So just make sure that you're trying to look at the weather, try to pick the warmer midday times to get out there if you really have to.
When it's 14.
When it's 14 as opposed to maybe 0 or 2. But look, everyone, I think a good amount of precaution is definitely warranted in a big storm like this.
No kidding. Brian, thank you so much. Great tips there.
All right, coming up, it is already that time of the year again.
Not a good one. Another shutdown showdown shaping up on Capitol Hill with a big funding bill vote set for today. But can Congress come to a spending consensus before a January 30th deadline, just 8 days away? We've got the latest from Washington next. Back now with a closer look at what's making news in the world of politics. This morning, a massive new funding bill is set for a vote today. There may not be enough support for it to pass, though.
NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has that and more. Gabe, good morning.
Hey there, Joe Savannah. Good morning. Well, the clock is ticking with another government shutdown deadline looming in just less than 10 days, January 30th. Congressional negotiators in both parties have released this massive bill aimed at fully funding the government. The bipartisan bill includes money for the Pentagon, the Departments of Labor, Health and Human Services, and Homeland Security. House Democratic leaders, though, told their members in a closed-door meeting Wednesday they will vote no over concerns the spending plan does not do enough to rein in ICE, according to two sources in the room. But that opposition won't likely be enough to block it, as some moderate Democrats who are facing tough re-election bids might join with the Republicans to support it. Plus, ahead of that potential shutdown showdown, we're getting a closer look at how Republicans managed to flip the script during a previous fight over a spending bill in March of last year. Majority Whip Tom Emmer took it personally when Democrats built a strategy that hinged on the House GOP's failure to pass it. And in an exclusive interview with NBC News, he pulled back the curtain in a series of maneuvers, including arm twisting by President Trump to keep Republicans in line. You can read more on NBCNews.com. Finally, the Trump administration deporting a record number of Cubans from the U.S. The New York Times reports the president has repatriated more than 1,600 Cubans in 2025, according to the Cuban government. That's about double the number who were repatriated in 2024. Cubans have long been treated differently than other immigrants, even when they enter the country illegally. Not anymore under President Trump, who sent more Cubans back than his three predecessors. Joan Savannah.
All right, Gabe, thank you so much.
A Minnesota state senator is opening up after surviving what authorities have called a politically motivated shooting spree. Police say the suspected gunman shot Senator John Hoffman and his wife at their home last June before killing State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband. Reporter Jana Shortle from our NBC affiliate in Minneapolis spoke with Hoffman about that horrific night.
644, code 3 in Champlin.
You want to go back to June of last year?
Yeah, we can. I was just sitting there in my green chair, and I fell asleep, like you do when you're, and Yvette, she went upstairs and, she was upstairs sleeping. I was in my green chair, and at 2 a.m., all of a sudden, bam, 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 I hear this pounding, and I could see red and blue lights outside my window, and, open up, it's the police, and I'm like, what the hell? And I, dummy me, I opened the door, flashlight in my eye, and starts quizzing me on who's in the house. And I could see the car with the lights, but he had a very heavy flashlight in my eyes. He finally, after he was pointing the gun to my daughter, I looked and I could see the mask, and I said, "You're not a cop." And I slammed the door on him. First bullet, then he started shooting, and all I heard was pop, 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 pop. And then time slowed down, Jana. One bullet I saw come through the door actually hit me here. This one was 2 millimeters from my heart. Then this one was also close. This one's still inside me, but this one went down and out my flank. I'm looking in disbelief, like, what's going on? I then fell down after, 9 bullets, 10 if you count this one, as I was falling backwards. And then Yvette went over on top of me, and she starts pushing on the guy. And, she shot twice here and 6 times here, but she got the door shut. And then last thing I remember was the nurse, the ER nurse, when I said, "Take us to Mercy," and her face got right in front of my face, and she said, "We got you, Johnny."
Senator Hoffman then woke up days later, foggy, but he knew he had been shot and that he was still alive. He was told his friends, Mark and Melissa Hortman, who he had dinner with just hours before the shootings, were dead. Then he was told who is accused of trying to kill him.
Do you think about Vance Belter?
No, I don't say his name. He doesn't deserve to have a name, because that person almost killed my wife and my daughter and me. And he killed 2 dear friends of mine.
Senator Hoffman hasn't lived a minute since June 14th without thinking of the Hortmans, especially Melissa.
Melissa, as she was arguing with me about one thing, she said, "I'm kind of like that little kid sister that you can't get rid of, She was my little kid political sister. But boy, what a fierce advocate. Absolutely a fierce advocate. That's the thing we can't forget.
Part of Senator Hoffman's vow to not forget is to stay in office and run for office again. And he's mindful that he's doing so in the here and now of Minnesota, where once again a shooting has drawn the nation's eyes to our state.
The young woman who was shot in Minneapolis, the sound of that gun was a 9mm sound, the same sound that I heard. That all has a triggering effect. In this world of healing, I'm supposed to be healing and recovering, and I'm recovering. And recovering isn't a linear thing, Jana. It's moment by moment. You have your good days, you have your great days, you have your not so good days, right?
Doesn't it ever get to be too much?
Oh, absolutely. And then I'm at a crossroad. Do I withdraw or do I keep engaged?
Purpose becomes clearer.
100%. It's not about me. It's about what we do collectively. Does that make sense?
Our thanks to Jana Shortle for that report.
Coming up, if you're weighing up whether to start taking one of those popular weight loss drugs, we've got a dose of good news for you this morning.
When we come back, we're doing a bit of a gut check, why the jabs and newly introduced pills could help with your broader digestive health, even lower your risk of colon cancer. The doctor is in next.
We're back now with new research suggesting GLP-1 weight loss drugs do more than help you drop those pounds. They could also improve your gut health.
Well, many people know about some of the side effects like nausea and constipation. Many doctors will tell you when those are managed properly, the potential upside can outweigh the downside.
Dr. Tricia Pasricha is an assistant professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School, also the author of the upcoming book, You've Been Pooping All Wrong. Dr. Pasricha, good morning. What a title there, and love the cover. In addition to all that, you're actually also the Ask a Doctor columnist for the Washington Post, which is where this all came from. Earlier this week, you published an article about some of the ways that GLP-1s might actually help beyond weight loss. Run us through this list. I know there's some new stuff here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Savannah. So, I think we focus so much of this conversation around GLP-1s around the weight loss, but there are so many other benefits that we really should be talking more about. So in the gut, new research has shown that taking GLP-1 medications are linked to a lower risk of getting stomach ulcers. And multiple randomized controlled trials have also shown that GLP-1 medications can improve outcomes in fatty liver disease. Fatty liver disease affects about 1 in 5 people globally, and it's also been one of the most difficult diseases to treat in gastroenterology. And then third, and this is really exciting, several studies have also shown that GLP-1 medications might be associated with the lower risk of developing several different kinds of cancer, including colorectal cancer.
I want to ask you about the middle one you mentioned there, improving outcomes for people with the fatty liver disease, even when fibrosis is involved. I mean, it's something studies suggest might be hard for other drugs to deliver, at least consistently. Help us understand how much of a breakthrough this is, why it is you think these GLP-1s are able to deliver results that other drugs haven't been able to.
It's been a game changer. And, it's because that, yes, losing weight will help your liver, but we're learning more that GLP-1s do a lot more than just that. And one of the mechanisms that we think that it's able to improve liver outcomes is because it reduces inflammation. And so if GLP-1 medications are able to reduce chronic inflammation, we think that's responsible for why they're able to improve some of that scar tissue and the inflammation that's in the liver, but also other organs. It's why we think we're seeing improvement in heart disease and even in the gut, such as with colorectal cancer.
There's big news recently, Doctor, about the pill version of some of these. Does all these benefits, do they apply there too?
Well, let's remember that the injectable medications, they've been around for 15, 20 years. The pill just got approved, which is big news, and I hope gives a lot more people access to these drugs. We have every reason to think that the outcomes are going to be similar to what we've seen with the injectable medications. It's the same drug. It's just delivered a little bit differently, but it's probably going to be a few more years before we can confirm whether there may be subtle differences in some of those outcomes.
We mentioned there are some uncomfortable side effects, things like nausea and constipation. Are there ways that you can minimize those side effects?
Absolutely. So, I tell my patients 2 things. One, anticipate that you're going to get those side effects. It's the GI side effects that is the reason that most people who aren't able to stick with the drugs end up quitting them. But at the same time, I also tell patients some good news, which is that for most people, these side effects tend to peak just in the first couple of days to weeks of starting them. And then for most people, they subside. I like to take a proactive approach, to plan on having these side effects. One of the simplest things I tell almost all my patients to do is just go ahead and start taking a fiber supplement like psyllium husk. I mean, who among us couldn't use a little more fiber, for one? But then just doing that can sometimes prime the bowels to kind of buffer you against what might come. Certainly, if you have GI issues at baseline, like nausea, like constipation, you should have a long, frank discussion with your physician. You might need some other medications that we can prescribe, but the great news here is that we have lots of tools at our disposal to help you make sure that these are medications you can stick with in the long term. You shouldn't have to just suffer through it.
Dr. Pasricha, thank you so much for joining us. Great conversation. Also, you can pre-order her new book we mentioned now. It is out in April. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
All right, time now for some money headlines. Ford is issuing a major new recall over a potential fire risk.
NBC News business and economy reporter Ali Canal has our Money Minute. Ali, good morning.
Good morning. Yes, this is not what drivers want to hear heading into this cold snap. Ford recalling nearly 120,000 vehicles over this fire risk. The issue involves the engine block heater, a device used in cold weather that can crack, leak coolant, and trigger a short circuit when plugged in. The recall affects certain Ford Focus and Escape models, along with some Lincoln MKC SUVs. Owners are urged not to use the heater until it's replaced, and Ford says dealers will fix it for free. Drivers can check the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration website or Ford's recall website for more details. And a Canadian court is allowing TikTok to keep operating in the country, at least for now. A federal judge overturned a 2024 government order that would have shut down TikTok's Canadian business over national security concerns, sending the case back for review. The app, which has faced scrutiny from lawmakers here in the U.S., has more than 14 million monthly users in Canada. And look what you made her do. Taylor Swift is making history, becoming the youngest female artist ever inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. The honor caps a record-setting run for the 36-year-old superstar and places her among a stacked 2026 class alongside songwriters like Alanis Morissette. The private induction ceremony will be held in New York later this year. And Savannah, I know you're a huge Swiftie. I am too. I feel like this is a well-deserved honor.
Yeah, I mean,
and what a year
come on.
she's had.
I know. It's
Crazy.
ridiculous.
Engagement,
and of course,
life of a showgirl.
No question, she should be in there.
I agree.
Joe does too.
Yes, absolutely. She's a fantastic songwriter, as is Alanis Morissette, like icon
Yes.
from my youth. So there you go.
I
Thank
love
you.
her too.
Thanks,
All right.
Of course.
Coming up, it's not quite America's return to the moon, but it's pretty darn close.
After the break, our own Al Roker introduces us to NASA's intrepid Artemis crew, who in just over 2 weeks will boldly go on a historic mission to orbit Earth's humble lunar neighbor. Strap in, that's next on Morning News Now. We are back with an upcoming NASA mission. The Artemis II crew, including 3 Americans and 1 Canadian astronaut, is scheduled to lift off toward the moon on February 6th. Their mission is to get the first close-up look at the moon's surface in more than 50 years and test the rocket's capabilities for a future lunar landing. Today, co-host Al Roker traveled to the Kennedy Space Center to watch the rollout of the most powerful rocket ever made, and he spoke to the crew about their upcoming historic journey.
Perched upon the historic launch pad 39B, the Artemis II rocket, the 322-foot-tall, 11 million-pound spacecraft, here after a nearly 12-hour, 4-mile slow roll from the vehicle assembly building.
So what do you think? Surreal, calm, serenity, beautiful.
This crew on the cusp of a new era in space exploration.
I'm NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman.
I'm NASA astronaut Victor Glover.
I'm NASA astronaut Christina Cook.
I'm Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen.
We met the Artemis II crew in the suit-up room, the same space where Apollo-era astronauts like Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins donned their spacesuits.
The things that inspired me happened right here in this room, and I think it's really special that we're going back to the moon from this same spot.
The 4 about to embark on a 10-day mission, breaking the bonds of gravity to be the first to get a close-up view of the lunar landscape in more than 50 years. What defines success for this mission?
Success is boots on the moon in Artemis 3. Success is Artemis 100, whenever that is.
The most powerful rocket ever built will lift off with about 8.8 million pounds of thrust. The ride to Earth's orbit, just 9 minutes. Then, after about a day of testing, the space explorers will begin a 4-day journey to the moon, completing a figure 8 around more than 200,000 miles from home. What do you hope to learn as part of this mission?
This is a relay race. What we're really trying to learn is this spacecraft to get it ready to put boots on the moon on Artemis 3. The geologists have been working with us and training us, and there's things that they're interested in, and they want to see what our human eyes pick up.
The flyby, taking the space explorers further than any human has gone before, where they'll set their sights on the dark side of the moon.
We look up at the moon and we see that same side of the moon all the time with different lighting on it. So there is a possibility that we will see features in sunlight that have never been seen by human eyes.
NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman believes the mission is the first step to a moon outpost, which will someday propel Americans to Mars.
From the beginning of humankind, that people have looked up at the night sky and seen the stars and wonder what's out there. So I do think this is the greatest adventure in human history.
The journey to the moon will be in a capsule about the size of a minivan. You guys are going to be in tight quarters for 10 days. How do you prepare for that?
We put a lot of emphasis on communication and being really open and honest with each other. We have a common assumption of well or good intent, and then we have an expectation that we'll just talk about it and bring it up and then get that kind of water under the bridge and move forward.
After nearly 3 years together, the four are a family. But it's more than that. It can be found in the name they gave their ship, Integrity.
Not only does integrity mean coming together, but it means when their intentions are matching their action. The symbolism of being in integrity during our entire mission is going to encourage us all to be our best selves.
Hoping to set an example for the future.
We've always looked at the moon and said, we've been there. For the Artemis generation, they're going to look at the moon now and go, we are there. It is a fundamental shift. It just gave me chills. They're going to look at it as a part of their legacy. That is powerful.
All right, thanks to Al Roker for that report. Well, the crew has a tagline, by all and for all, and they told Al they really want the world to be inspired by their mission. NASA has some final preps and an important fueling test in the coming weeks that will determine that exact launch date.
All right, finally this hour, it is nomination day for the 2026 Oscars. The 98th Academy Award nominations revealed earlier this morning in L.A. by Oscar nominee Danielle Brooks and actor Louis Pullman.
The nominees for Best Picture, look at your screen. This is just some of them. It includes these big movies from the year like One Battle After Another, Sinners, Frankenstein, Sentimental Value. On your screen, you saw a few more of those, F1, etc. Some notable nominees for Best Actor include Timothée Chalamet and Leonardo DiCaprio. Sinners received the most nominations with 16, including Michael B. Jordan for Best Actor. Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another was close behind with 13 nominations, including Best Adapted Screenplay, Tiana Taylor for Best Supporting Actress, and both Sean Penn and Benicio del Toro for Supporting Actor.
This year's awards also have a new category, Achievement in Casting. You can see all the nominees there, including Hamnet, Sinners, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, and the foreign film Secret Agent. One Battle After Another does appear to be the favorite heading in for Best Picture,
I have
but
so
anything
much
can
to
happen.
watch.
There you go. Got time.
I know. What
All
a stacked list. Love it.
That is going to do it for this hour. Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.